With midterms just a few days away, how much could U.S. foreign policy actually change if Republicans take back control of Congress? GZERO's Jon Lieber has some thoughts.
There are three major issues worth watching next year in Congress: Ukraine, Saudi Arabia, and China. Assuming Republicans control the House next year, the likely Speaker of the House, Kevin McCarthy, has warned that Republicans won't give further blank checks for Ukraine. This warning does not mean there won't be any checks for Ukraine, but it does mean that Republicans would be likely to create conditions for that aid that haven't existed so far. On the opposite side of the issue is Senate Minority Leader Mitch McConnell, who would take control of the Senate if the Republicans were to win. McConnell has called for more aid as Russia steps up its offensives, worrying that isolationist impulses in the Republican Party will leave the Ukrainians on their own. McConnell's view seems to be shared by a majority of Republicans, even those who are increasingly questioning how much value America is getting for its money. There will be more Republicans next year who will question this blank check approach, particularly as inflation continues to hit Americans hard. Inflation that is in part caused by higher energy prices, which are exacerbated by the recent actions of one of America's most important allies in the Middle East, Saudi Arabia. The relationship between the Saudis and the Biden administration started out frosty as President Biden criticized Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman for human rights abuses when he first came into office. That criticism turned into an effort at friendship, however, when U.S. energy prices started to rise with the Ukraine war, leading to the famous fist bump the two shared back in July. Not long after, however, the Saudis cut oil production during a global energy price crunch. This was seen in Washington as a major rebuke for the United States and to President Biden. There's been reporting that MBS, who's just 37, has mocked the president and prefers his predecessor, Donald Trump, with whom he had a much better relationship with. A relationship that started with Trump's first foreign trip to the Saudi kingdom, where he was greeted around an orb. Biden and the White House are not happy with OPEC, which is contributing to rising gas prices just weeks ahead of the midterm election. And gas prices are closely tied to a president's popularity. Administration officials and Democrats are now wondering if it's time to reassess this incredibly important relationship, while Republicans continue to push for increased energy production at home instead of continuing to rely on the increasingly unreliable Saudi partnership. If there's one area that unites Republicans and Democrats in Congress and the Biden administration, it's the belief that the biggest threat to the country is also the U.S.'s largest trading partner, China. The Biden administration has pushed hard to cut off China's ability to develop technologically by denying them access to U.S. semiconductor technologies, continuing a tech Cold War that was started in the Trump administration. Republicans have typically had a very hawkish view of the Chinese Communist Party and have joined Democrats in prioritizing bringing manufacturing back to the United States. But this is probably still the area where you'll see the biggest divergence from this year to next year. Democrats in the House have been far more cautious about provoking a new Cold War with China, but Republicans have no such concerns, and they are already planning on investigating the origins of COVID and the economic and military threats posed by China, and tiptoeing closer to Beijing's red line of recognizing Taiwan as a sovereign state. No matter what happens during the midterms, the world will be watching. For GZERO World, I'm Jon Lieber.